That's cool. Yeah.
Hey, welcome everyone. Good to have you all with us. Thanks for joining us. And I'm muted. There we go. We're unmuted. Okay, we have welcome. Now I'm not muted. It's very exciting now. That's Beth.
Yay.
That's Beth, and that's Nicole, and that big black square is April. There's April. Yeah, there's April down there, but your camera went black, April.
No.
Yeah, we've been having some issues here in the warm-up with April's camera not cooperating, so she'll work on that. I don't know.
Are we still black?
You're still black.
Well, done. Let's try.
And now we lost Nicole.
No,
There's
I'm
Nicole.
still here.
Oh no.
There's
Still
Nicole.
Oh,
All right.
good.
I'm gonna stick with this camera and not switch between cameras. So I'll be hiding behind the screen, and we'll focus on Nicole.
Okay. All right, that'll work. Can we hear you, Nicole? Pardon us, folks. We got to get this worked out.
Yes. I can't hear you. Oh, Nicole can't hear you, but hang on. Maybe I'm... Oh, that will be the call you lost. It's Nicole. Sorry, everyone.
Oh yeah, we lost Nicole.
Yeah, we're still
'Cause
here. I mean,
I'm seeing Nicole just fine now. So we need
Yeah.
Nicole.
seeing her, we'll work on hearing her.
Here comes Nicole
Is she
calling
back?
in again.
Okay. Okay.
I'm adding Nicole. There we have it. Oh, I believe we have it.
Hey.
This is very exciting. We have it. So upper left is Nicole and bottom right is Nicole, but
Yeah.
behind that camera is April. But we've seen April before, and we enjoy seeing you, but don't mess with anything, so it works.
Old news, I know.
Okay, so we're gonna, as you saw on the opening screen, we're gonna see. There's April. We'll see Not a Basket Case. Gonna get a tour with Nicole and April here in just a moment. Today's podcast, Beth and I had a nice discussion about color and whether what we do is art or a hobby or craft or whatever.
Right, or something.
Something, yes. So that was fun to talk about. Now remember, next Wednesday, Kathy Ray, our first Thread Talk, next Wednesday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, right here, will be Kathy Ray. And I already got, somebody sent me a series of questions about threads. Very helpful. So if you have questions, things you want Kathy to talk about, let me know. Fire them at me. Sunday is Lorraine Turner. Do not miss Lorraine Turner. That is some fascinating work that woman does. Do not miss that. Winners from Wednesday night were Ruthie Burns and Susan Berger. Ruthie, yours went in the mail today, and Susan asked us to hold it till the 20th when she will be able to receive it. So that's what we're doing. And I probably shouldn't have said that because then that tells everybody that she's not home. But yeah, I blew it. That's all I have for announcements. All the other stuff you've heard before, and we want maximum time with April and Nicole. And April's, Nicole, you went black. So April's working so we can hear Nicole. So we're good. So I'm going to now switch to, okay, you have, your camera is full screen, April. And
Love it.
it's all you and Nicole. We're just going to ask questions as you go.
Hello there.
Uh-oh.
Oh, you got me?
There you go. Go, April.
Okay, cool. So I'll get Nicole to introduce herself. I'll briefly introduce her. So Nicole is a member of New South Wales Basketry, which is the local basketry making guild equivalent. And so I've asked her to take us through the pieces today because she knows a lot more than I do about basket making and techniques.
Thanks,
Okay,
April.
great. Yeah,
That's-
and Nicole, you'll have to introduce yourself because what April just said was all reverbed and we didn't get any of it. So
Yes, it's reverbed for me too.
Oh, okay.
Am I reverbed as well?
No, you're fine. Your microphones are picking each other up is what the problem is.
Okay.
April, mute.
Okay,
April, mute
so
yourself.
Right.
So, and you can still hear me, Gary?
I hear you perfect
Yes,
now.
lovely.
Yes, beautiful.
Okay, yeah, that's much better in my ears too. So, hi everybody. My name is Nicole Robbins. I'm a member of Basketry New South Wales. In Australia, practically every state has a basketry organisation or guild, and but this exhibition that April has put together includes basket makers from other parts of Australia as well, and we've also got some international artists. So it's not just from Basketry New South Wales. Although I guess I do know a number of the members personally and other artists here. And I've got some work, I've got a piece in the exhibition myself as well.
Excellent. So we're
Are you going to, shall I just start to walk around and talk about artists and
Yes.
you'll interrupt me with questions? Is that how you'd like to do it?
That's how it's going to
let
go.
me know.
Yep, that's how it's going to go.
Okay. Okay, beautiful.
April's your camera person, and you just go. Yes.
Okay, I'm great, but not good at this. It's not my daily profession. Okay, we're going to start with Felicity Chapman. Felicity Chapman is a First Nations artist, and she's got 3 pieces here that basically draw on basketry coiling, I guess, as a technique, but there's some traditional techniques from her Indigenous culture, and there's also some modern components as well. This bag here, she's called Dilly Bag Nabang, and it says that it's got reclaimed hand-dyed green waste, including hibiscus and palm and studio-dyed raffia as well. So there's some non-traditional elements in all her work. Womb medicine is particularly beautiful with the possum fur, which is a really, First Nations traditional material, and it was traditionally used to clothe and keep people warm. And that just, I love that piece. And then in her final piece here, Callous Consumerism, is really about confronting all of us about the negative impacts of our obsession with technology and all the waste that we're leaving behind neatly in a woven vessel. And it uses traditional basketry looping around the rim, and it's a coiled piece. It starts out with some raffia on the base, but as you can see, it incorporates a whole lot of materials.
Can we go back to the other two, and can you talk about the materials that are used? And...
Yeah, sure. Yes. So womb medicine in the middle here is principally raffia and corn husk, and it says quandong seed, as well as the possum fur in the middle. And possums, as you probably know, are an Australian marsupial, and yeah, a very traditional material for our First Nations people. The dilly bag, again, it's a very traditionally shaped vessel. It actually looks like it should be, I mean, shouldn't be anything, but it does hang as well.
Okay.
Like so, yeah.
The feather is symbolic in some way?
I think it is. Personally, I'm a non-Indigenous weaver, and so I don't use feathers in my work because I feel like they are sacred objects for many people, and particularly our First Nations artists. So yeah, I'm assuming so, but I don't have any information about that.
Okay, yeah. It's just beautiful work. Boy, that's quite a statement in the third piece there with all of the electronic junk.
Callous consumerism. Oh, it really is. I think a lot of our basket makers are very concerned about environmental issues, and obviously, probably because so many of us are using natural materials, natural fibers from the landscape, both native and non-native plants. So I think it's a big issue, and we've got a global crisis at the moment. An environmental crisis that we're all confronting. So I think it's coming out in art everywhere, isn't it? Yes.
Help us so that we have some background as we go through it. When it comes to preparing the fibers for that weaving, is it chop off the grass and reeds, and then is there a special drying process, or how does that work?
Look, it really varies, but you're right. With this, I'm just trying to look around it. Perhaps if we look at Nurit's work next over here. Nurit, like myself, works with local fibres that she's gathered in her local area. They're not necessarily Indigenous and endemic to that area, but you can see from the colour range, the great beauty of all the natural fibres. So traditionally in basketry, you harvest your materials and you dry them first, and then you soak them to weave with them. And so when you soak materials, it's much easier to coil. These are coiled pieces. They're braided. This employs basketry braiding. And you can't do that when most fibres are dry. You can't do that when you just pick fibres. If you just pick off a blade of grass, it's got too much water in it, actually. So it sounds kind of a bit, reductive to actually dry it and then re-wet it. But that is, in fact, what you have to do, because plants have too much moisture in them to work with them when they're fresh. Generally, generally speaking.
And see, that's the part that I'm interested in, is that process. So you dry them, and then you control the moisture content after that then.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And every material here would need, I taught a workshop yesterday, and one of the first questions that people always ask you is, how long do I wet this for? And, how do I prepare this? And there's just no easy answer. It's something that you really, it's a trial and error kind of process that you work out as you go, how long things need to soak. Some things are really solid, like vine material, and you can soak them and then, form things with them. But, sometimes you feel like you're really wrestling with materials. Other materials, you're literally kind of waving underwater or spritzing with water, and they need a lot less moisture. So, that's one of those things. It depends on the material. And for everyone here, it would be quite different
Well,
in terms of, sorry, yeah.
So that's where a lot of the skill comes in, is knowing what to do to get,
Absolutely.
yeah. Now,
Yeah, absolutely.
do most of you who do this grow your own
I
plants?
grow a lot.
Yeah.
Again, so it depends whether you're using traditional, I guess, natural fibers or non-traditional, and the repurposing and the upcycling is very present in basketry at the moment. So I'm someone who works with natural materials, and I grow a lot of my own, and I gather them. I live in a very urban environment in Sydney, and so I do both. I grow my own because I'm a keen gardener, and I think that's actually how I became interested in basketry. For me, it was about a love of plants and the natural world. And I think it is for many of my colleagues, but not all. And others come from very different and diverse backgrounds. So you can't generalize about that, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. So I assume that in this process, growing, there's a whole aspect of it, just simply sharing experiences with different plants and different fibers.
Yes.
And so that
absolutely.
there's that whole thing, and then there's the art of actually creating and weaving.
Absolutely. There's the materials that we use in basketry and how you process them. You know, that's a beautiful question because, you know, I feel like, you know, the 10 years that I've been making baskets, it's been learning about plants and how to prepare them and how to work with them, and the joy in kind of understanding and having a relationship with those individual plants, and even thinking, you know, it's spring, I'm going to go out and pick up jacaranda stalks, you know, for instance. So it's very much a harvesting with the seasons, even as an urban basket maker, where I'm just picking up sticks off the sidewalk, perhaps, you know, it's not, you know, really, it's funny when people talk about harvesting or foraging, you know, it means different things to all of us, but I'm very much, it's, you know, off the sidewalk, in the streets, in local parks. My neighbours, it's relationships with people who give you materials. It's all these kinds of things. You can grow them, you can collect them, you know, again, everybody has a different kind of culture about it.
Yeah. Now we have in the needle and thread world, we have people who have a stash problem in that they have basements full of thread and needles. I'm not naming anyone.
Oh,
but,
yes.
No, you would never name anyone, would you,
I
Gary?
would. No, I'm not going to put any names on this stuff. But then, so do you have that same kind of thing? A room full of dried?
Yes. To greater and lesser extents, and family members are very, you know, very understanding. Often, you know, I've had family members, my kids walk in and the bathtub is full of soaking materials, and it's like, Mom, I really want to take a bath, you know, like, can you please? They're just, you know, they've been really lovely, and also drying materials hanging around the house. I think I've refined it over the years. I think, you know, when you start and you're all enthusiastic, you're collecting you can't go anywhere without collecting stuff. And that's the other thing that people are very understanding about, you know, don't pick that up, Mum. You know, they see me go in for the pickup. It's like, leave it, Mum, just leave it. They're always embarrassed by their mother who's, you know, picking up stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
And
Now talk about.
We do have a question.
Go ahead.
We do have a question, Gary. So someone wants to know, do the artists use patterns to make these pieces of art?
Yes.
Okay, so
look, let's, I'm just thinking, perhaps let's, we've got so many artists to talk about. I'm, you know, don't want to spend too much time talking about my practice really, but Anne Coddington is an American artist, very well known. She teaches and is a professor of art, actually. So if, you know, there's a twined vessel underneath, she's used the technique of netting over the top. And I think the whole vessel is also soaked in something because it's very solid and rigid. And it's, you know, an exquisite piece. It's a very refined piece. It shows to me someone who's been practicing for over 20 years.
It's beautiful.
Next, there's, yeah.
Okay, now I just wanted to get some background in, because most of us probably don't know a thing about it. So I feel like we've done that. So go ahead and start showing us the artists so we can enjoy this work.
Okay, shall we, how do you want to do this, April? Okay, all right. So before I was standing in front of Neurotophia, and her work is principally with natural materials. So she's been making for a few years now. I was one of her early teachers, so I feel like I can identify quite strongly with her work and development. Particularly, I love the Dracaena Draco across here. Dracaena Draco or dragon tree is a palm originally from the Canary Islands, but it just stands out as a basketry material in a number of people's works all around the world. And she uses a braiding technique here. Again, that can be seen, I think, in my understanding, that originally comes from work with esparto grass in Spain. And I, adore Spanish basketry. It's using a coiling technique, which you can see and stitched between the ribbons. And I just think it really highlights well the different colours of the different natural materials, and they're all dried. So these are the colours that they remain. Natural materials do fade slightly, but for instance, the orange sheath on the dragon tree, I guess why we all like using it so much is that bright orange,
Right.
If it's kept out of direct sunlight, will stay that colour.
Wow.
Beautiful.
That's an interesting color.
It is.
Yes. Okay.
Will we move?
Yep. Feel free to keep going.
Yeah, sorry, April's lost sound, so she's going to
Uh-oh.
be relying on me, I think. So next door we have Flora Friedman. Flora Friedman is a Sydney artist. She's a very experienced
Yeah, we're frozen
elder
here.
with
We're-
basketry
Okay,
in
wait a
South Wales.
second. We're frozen.
We're frozen. April, the image is frozen.
April, the image is frozen.
There. Now we got you. Okay.
Got me now?
Yay.
I think so.
Yay.
It's still hung up. I don't know why it's hanging up.
He said it's still hanging up. Is that, can you hear me, Gary?
We hear you, but there's no motion in the video.
There's no motion in the video.
Beth, turn your video off.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
Maybe it's a bandwidth issue. Let's turn the video off.
How do I do that?
Should I do the same thing? I've got a phone in my pocket.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Turn off your video. So the only video running is April. There we go. That freed something up.
I can't hear anything now. I think I've hung up.
Test.
Oh, no, I can. Yep. How is that?
And it's still frozen.
Still
Yeah, and I
frozen.
can't figure out how to do this on this phone.
That's all right, Beth.
This is unfortunate.
Oh, I lost it.
Okay, we're going to rejoin the call, Gary.
Okay. There's Beth.
I can see you.
There we go.
Are you good?
Is that good?
Yes.
Great, I can hear again.
Okay.
Now I think we
We
recovered.
can hear again.
Yes.
Can I help you?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Okay, I think we recovered.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, lovely. So I was starting to talk about the work of Flora Friedman, one of our more experienced members of Basketry New South Wales and one of my early teachers. These pieces show, I think, a real diversity of her work as well. She principally uses the basketry twining and uses both rattan and natural materials. If you come up close here, you can see some of the lovely texture. This is Bangalow palm inflorescence here. Up here, this piece also is a sheath from the Bangalow palm and involves basketry, weaving, randing in this case, which is that over and under technique. And over here again, she's used ribbons, finely cut ribbons from the Bangalow palm sheath, which is the same material as this other piece, and twined around it using the rattan cane. beautiful coral pea vine around this one, and a more formal kind of structural twined piece underneath.
Okay.
Can we go back to
Nicole,
the screen?
Nicole,
Yeah,
I think we lost Nicole's sound.
Oh, we've lost Nicole's sound. When do we lose Nicole's sound?
Oh, a couple minutes ago.
Oh my God, a couple of minutes ago. Okay. Oh my God. Can you hear her through me, or can you hear me at all?
I can hear you talk, yeah.
I think it's having my phone in my pocket.
Okay, maybe just hold it.
Yes, but my back?
Not yet.
Can you see me?
She just muted herself.
I muted myself. I'm going to try and stay quiet so you can see when Nicole rejoins.
Okay.
Technology issues.
Yes.
Oh,
Trying to do a lot here. It's all right. Nicole, hang up and call back.
Okay.
So,
We're hanging up
love
and
the
calling
piece
back
behind
while
her.
Nicole is.
Okay.
And I do see, Linda, I see your question. We will ask them once we get some more these technical issues done.
This work is stunning. It's absolutely stunning.
Yeah, look at that piece there. It's just, it looks like a pine cone, but I know that's not what it is. I'm like fascinated by it.
Yeah, so these 4 pieces are by Sydney artist Katrina Pollard, who's quite well known, has a website and very prolific also on Instagram, as many of us are. And Katrina is really interesting. She forages for her materials and also does a lot of bushwalking and is out in the natural world and is very influenced, and all of her pieces probably reference her relationship with nature. But also there's a great, I think, a really interesting minimalism in some of her pieces, and they really move beyond basketry to fibre art and, have a real sculptural dimension. The piece that these pieces, I guess probably at least 3 of them, reference bushfires that we had in Australia last Christmas. At the end of 2019, and I think many artists have been, really struck by environmental issues and the climate crisis, and want people to start to think about this more deeply. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they really are beautiful. Did you have some questions?
Yeah, well, I think
we did have one.
Yeah, go ahead, Beth.
We did have one question. If the fibers needed to be conditioned to keep them to drying out after you've woven them.
No, no, they don't. And I think it's quite interesting to me, people's response to basketry and fibre art is often with that concern. But, if you think about the baskets that you have in your house, some people have had baskets in their family for over 100 years, willow baskets, and, and they've been really not treated very well, and we throw them around and we take them to the market and they're fine. And yet when people see our work on walls like this, people are very concerned about, how will I take care of that? And, I would argue, don't worry. If you love it, take it home, enjoy it. And, a soft paintbrush is perfect to just, if you can see, dust, people will often say to me, but don't they gather lots of dust? And I don't really think that they gather any more dust than a painting does with a frame on a painting that you have to clean. So I think that's a really interesting question. I think it's just that it's a newer art form in terms of, people bringing this into their house. These philodendron sheaths I think have been, in this form now for some time, and they're not going to fade. That's the colour when they're dried and fall off the philodendron. That's the colour that they are. Katrina's twined this into, a really beautiful vessel, and you do have to not bump it and be careful of the edges, but it's quite a solid structure actually, and it's like any other art object that we would put in our house. It's a sculptural vessel and it should last for a very long time.
That is just beautifully done.
Yeah,
that is just gorgeous.
I didn't know you could do this.
Thank you. I think she'll be thrilled to hear that.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The ones we were seeing previously, where just before this, to the left, to April's left there.
Yes, these pieces.
No, back the other way, where we really don't have a vessel, but we have
the more sculptural pieces.
Yes.
Yes. No, I would classify this as fiber art rather than it's not a basket, but it's Katrina is definitely coming from a basket maker's perspective. This employs looping, and I'll talk about basketry looping on some of the other pieces. But here it's done in a more random fashion with wire, and it's got some pigment, black pigment over the top, charcoal, and it's actually copper wire, I think, initially. So yeah, it's definitely, she's moving out into a more sculptural, fiber art, I guess, would be the term I would use. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so interesting, the range that we see.
It is. Yeah. And I think that's why people love coming to contemporary basketry exhibitions, because it really does show you about the person's relationship with their art, and that we are all working in so many different ways, and that's what makes it so lovely. Yeah. If we come down here to Asahi So's work. Asahi is a member of Basketry New South Wales. He's also a ceramicist. But first, this material, Bangalow palm inflorescence, is the same material as Katrina's piece that we were looking at first on the wall. She's got some pigments, some black pigment over hers. And this one is in its more natural state in terms of the colour, and, it joins the palm trunk here. This is an indigenous plant, the Bangalow palm, and many of us use it in Australia for basketry. The technique here is random weaving, and I think that Asahi is one of our most exciting random weavers, because he does such fine work with material, that has been harvested off the ground, basically. So it's very special.
Oh, so okay, so that because that was one of my questions then. So this is literally stuff that just falls on the ground. Nobody's.
It really does. That's exactly where it's coming from. Occasionally, when people are pruning and chopping down trees, you will get this material in its green form, and you have to let it dry. But typically, when it falls off the tree, it's blown down in high winds. We're all looking around a lot after a high wind. Palm trees are very tall, so you can't get up there and get it. And so to get this when it's intact, and to get an inflorescence that's in, such good nick or good condition, really depends on luck, basically, and the fact that it hasn't been on the tree drying out too long, because things can get very damaged, very sun damaged in Australia, because they're on the tree for too long.
So in a windstorm, then all the basket weavers all bolt out of the house. Oh, we do.
That's it. We're all basket cases out there running down the street, picking things up. I have been known to swerve when I've been driving along because I see something. So it's dangerous. It's also dangerous because palm trees are very tall, and we drive around looking up, in the sky at what's growing up there. So yes, basket case. It's a good name. So from working with natural materials, Asahi is also a very skilled ceramicist, and there's some very delicate. A lot of people now are turning to blending ceramics and making a ceramic bottom and then weaving on top of it. And that's what I love about Asahi is I think that he really achieves such an aesthetic blend of mixing kind of the two ceramics with its basketry looping. Again, it's done with wire, so not a natural material here either. And these little pieces, just using my hand, I guess, you can see that they're just tiny and exquisite. And he calls this little group huddle, and they are in a little huddle there, and very beautiful.
Wow, that is gorgeous.
Yes. Moving on,
Very nice.
David Grushko. So this is also done with a palm, but it's a different palm. David Grushko is from Israel, so he's one of our international artists here. And, you know, this work is quite beautiful. He's, I guess, drawing on Israeli traditions of working with date palm. And this palm, you know, if you look at it, it's also in fluorescence, which is the random weave that Asahi, that I was just showing you from Asahi. But you can see it's much more solid material, and he's using it like you would cane or willow. And the technique is basketry twining here. And twining is where you have upright stakes and you weave with two weavers around them. And so that's there's some quite formal European traditions in his making. I believe he grew up in France. And you know, and this piece is more traditional and more like a traditional vessel, but you know from the sculptural grapevine on the top, I mean, it's also something that's extremely sculptural and beautiful. And it's, you know, it's not to put oranges in, that's for sure.
Yeah, I love the way
that's beautiful.
Yeah, the way he wove to match the shape of the big vine wood. Is
exactly.
Beautiful.
Exactly. And I think that you'll find in basketry, often that's what we're doing, because you're finding pieces in nature and then you're using the traditional basketry techniques to enhance those natural shapes, you know, and so it's really using the traditional techniques to really show off the natural materials. And so I think it's putting the materials to the forefront.
Yes. Beautiful work. More, please.
More, please. Okay. UK. This is and I seem to be going to the international artists because I don't want to leave them out, because I think in times of COVID it's so special that we have had you know, how many artists was it? 5, 4?
Like that, yeah.
Yeah, artists from overseas have sent pieces to Australia, to you know, the bottom of the world, and it's, you know, yeah, such tricky times. We don't even know if shows are going ahead. This show has been postponed. It, you know, was originally going to be held last year, and so I just really want to say thank you to all of them and just talk about their fantastic work and also how much we've enjoyed having them in Australia, or a little part of them. So Nina is from the UK. And I think artists here and many Australians will just identify with her work because they're pieces that have been found on the seaside, and it's ghost net. And we have a tradition also in Australia of using ghost net in basketry and woven forms. And, you know, it's basically, again, what I would call environmental work that's calling out the damage that these materials do to marine life and to our bird life. And so it's really important work, isn't it? And but it's also beautiful. And she's achieved some really fine, if you look at April showing you now, pieces that just show such fine basketry looping on the top of her pieces. And again, they're not large pieces, and it's just very intricate. Also, the colour grading I love. As someone who works with natural materials, I just think that's lovely. All the pops of colour and how she's blended the found materials so well together.
Just gorgeous work.
Yeah.
The color palettes in those are fantastic.
They are, aren't they, Gary? That's what I really love. Yes.
And I can see the
so
fine work up on top. That's beautiful. That fine weaving
Yes.
she's done up on the top.
yes, yeah, absolutely. And so Nina is from Bristol, and so also is an artist who's on Instagram, and people can see more of her work there. Yeah. So let's go over and look at Julia Hegarty's work. Julia Hegarty is so impressive to me. She's on the Sunshine Coast. Now, there are found elements here. You can see, obviously, in this major piece, there's a huge piece of driftwood. Most of the actual basketry or weaving is raffia, and it's naturally, I'd say hand-dyed raffia. You know, it's not just the colours are really superb of the raffia. This is called a technique that I call basketry looping, and is our First Nations makers in Australia use this same technique for Indigenous Aboriginal string bags, and she's employed it here in a more sculptural way. And I think she would have used some stiffening to achieve some of the, you know, the beautiful lines in it. It's evocative of where she comes from on the Sunshine Coast, the coastal dunes. And I think if you look at that, you really see how she's used colour to evoke all the colours that you see on dunes, on sand dunes. And I just see rolling sand there when I look at that. So, you know, I think that's just one of the standout pieces of this show for me.
Man,
That's
amazing.
amazing.
It just is. It really is.
It is.
I just.
and then the fact that she put something into to make it such a sculpture.
And it also evokes knitting also. I don't know if that's, you know,
Right.
that's deliberate, but I think for many of the women who have looked at that, you know, they see hands knitting as well, probably.
I want to.
Yeah.
What is the piece with the little flowers?
Yes.
Underneath?
So her
Yeah.
her other pieces are also from raffia, and in this, whereas this is looped, this is a coiling technique. It's called hidden core coiling, because you can't see the core. You just see the raffia, the green raffia, that is, you know, so delicately stitched over the top of it. The flowers employ the looped technique, and also the ceramics, the ceramic elements she also makes herself. There's little birds around the edge, and I think it just is evocative of the landscape where she's from on the coast. I love the hanging birds here, because birds in Australia, probably your birds too, hang upside down and they eat all our, you know, nectars and blossoms on trees. And there's nothing more joyful than seeing a tree full of parrots on, you know, our native birds just taking a feed on the beautiful blossoms.
Yes.
But the top here is also very much about sand dunes and evocative of the landscape. And she's just, the skill here. And also the sizing of these pieces means that there is, they just took forever to make, basically. So I'm in awe of that as another maker. You know, you just think, you know how long things take to make. And there's many pieces here that just have so many hours of work in them.
Yeah, that stands out. That in my head, exactly that. Especially those pieces, I just see hundreds and hundreds of hours of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can see from the size of it, for one thing. But, you know, there's so much joy in making these large pieces where you take time. And I think there's also a mindfulness in that as well. And I think that's the other thing that we can say about basketry and fibre artists, is that we're very mindful makers. And the fact is that as the world is speeding up, I think there's something quite purposeful and political to slow down and to spend time with the materials.
Yes.
And could you name the artist again, please?
Yes, the artist is, I just don't want to get it wrong, Julia Hegarty. And Julia's work is also on Instagram. Many of our Australian basket makers use Instagram, and some are on Facebook and some aren't. But I do know that people can see her, and we've just showed you the spelling of her name, Julia, with a Y. Yeah. So do you want to move over? to Gillian Cully's work over here. And this piece, I love Gillian's work. This piece does have a European sensibility, and she acknowledges that she really wanted to pay homage to the Irish basket maker Jo Hogan. And you can see that in the piece. She's actually done some learning with Jo in Europe, and several of our basket makers have done that, have gone over and have, worked with, I guess, more traditional materials in Europe. I think Jo traditionally it would be working with willow. But so seeing those kind of European styles, I guess, reworked with Australian materials is really fascinating, and it gives it a completely different look and texture. And the twisted hazel on the top is magnificent. It's just almost like a little bonsai plant or something. I don't know, but it's lovely.
Yes. Wow.
And will we go through around the corner? We've got a corridor of work here. Australian Byron Bay artist Zimmy Forrest is here and here. Her work can also be found on Instagram. In particular, I think her spherical shapes and mandala shapes are quite evocative of her work generally. But again, you can see up close, she's used Bangalore palm inflorescence and a number of different basketry techniques, including crochet, lashing, and twining. And also, I should say that just the perfection of the natural materials and how long it takes to gather these materials in Australia, because, unlike other climates, European climates, we have a very hot, humid climate, particularly where Zimmy is. So many of the materials, have fallen to the ground. They become, dirty, moldy very quickly. So to actually gather perfect materials to use in your work can take months sometimes. It's just a very different landscape, obviously, to European basketry.
Well, that is just beautiful. Yeah, I was picking up on that you have to be quite diligent in gathering your materials to get
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And if it's going to rain and you need something, I'll be dashing out to get something before it gets too wet, or, whatever you have to do. Kelsey Bryant Dugan over here has a lovely jacaranda piece, and you can see, I'm sure the jacaranda would be more known probably to your viewers. It's obviously not a native tree here, but it provides beautiful sculptural elements for basketry. So jacaranda is often, widely used. So this is my work. It's principally, again, I've just worked with different parts of the Bangalore palm here. And I guess that's what I was really trying to do with this. It was really a materials-focused kind of exercise. And so I've used the sheath, which is the top, forms the base of the frond, I should say, and is the hardest kind of part of the Bangalore palm that we can use in basketry. I've also used the inflorescence here, and I've coiled here, and this is basketry looping here, and I've looped with the spade. A spade, I'd love to have a spade here to show you, but I've cut it up into fine ribbons here. This is a spade, forms the base of the second piece. And I've just started to use spades quite a lot. And I cut them, I guess, and make stakes and then weave with that. And it's a softer material, so it takes a bit of time. And so there's twining and there's kupenga. I was taught by a Maori basketry weaver to do the kupenga stitch, but you'll also know it as a lace stitch, and it comes across, in many different cultures. So for me, it's really a blend of wanting to push materials and see what I can do with them, but also the way that I can make them come together in some kind of harmonious way.
Right, like using different stitches in a needlework.
Yes.
It looks like you've used a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
different weaving
Yeah.
techniques.
Yeah. But essentially, most of it is from the Bangalore palm.
Yeah, isn't just hearing her talk, Beth, isn't it interesting? You hear all the same terms and approaches that we
Right.
use in needlework. We're just using a different
Yes.
medium. Yeah.
Yes,
Right,
exactly. And I think I'm, that's why, I guess I'm fascinated by needlework as well. And, and I don't profess to know anything about it, but I would listen to makers talk about their work, and it's just as fascinating to me. And I think there's a lot of crossover, and that's really interesting,
Right.
isn't it?
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And even the question, what can I do with this material? How can I push it? How far can I push
Yeah.
this to see?
That's fascinating.
how far I would
Personally,
go?
that's fascinating to me, and I think there's that. I guess in basketry, you're working with nature, so it's also there's I often think about I love Japanese basketry and how they work so beautifully with bamboo, and sometimes the bamboo pieces are bent almost to breaking point, and it's just really what is possible with this fiber, and I guess that's what I was trying to achieve with my work here with the Bangalore palm. What are the many ways that I can use this one fiber, and so it was experimental. I was thinking more along those kind of lines. And it's much fun to play with different fibers in this way. Yeah. But moving on, so Suzanne Davey is an artist who crosses many mediums in her work, and this is a beautiful sculptural piece, and she's employed, again, very sensitively, I think, both natural and non-natural materials. There's very fine copper wire work. It's almost like a netting in this piece. There's fabric remnants. The way she's treated them, they almost, a bit like the ghost net the rope that you find on the beach, they almost look like found plant life. So, it's a beautiful piece, but it does cross, a number of different mediums. She's an artist and a painter, and so, and we often find that in basketry. People, come from very different traditions. Glenise Keaveney's work here is interesting. She comes from 3 generations of seamstresses, and so I guess she stands out to me because her stitching is incredibly fine. This loafer, this Bangalore palm shoe here is just beautiful, and she's really, I think she's the queen of Bangalore palm sheath, really, because she's made such amazing costumes from this one material. It has almost a cardboard look, but when you wet it, it's leather. It's leathery, it's soft, it's pliable, you can shape it. You have to stitch it when it's wet. And then also the beautiful gum nuts and callistemon pods, just, and I'm not sure what the red nut is, but all natural materials. This piece is called Other People's Shoes, which is a lovely idea, something we all need to do, step into other people's shoes. So there's kind of a paper mache-like aspect to this, and the wire looping at the end, again, a traditional basketry technique in most basketry cultures has some kind of basketry looping in its history, or netting. Knotted and unknotted netting. Glenise has Kentia palm inflorescence here. That's another palm we find a lot in Australia. And she's used twining in different materials around it, including the wire, and some found objects. And her last piece here is called Caught in the Net. And this, again, is very much an environmental piece. How everything is connected to everything else, she says, and we need to stop and ponder the impact of our actions and inactions.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
And I guess that the colour of that net blends beautifully into Trudy Nisbet's wave here. Trudy is a Central Coast weaver, And each of these discs are coiled, and you will probably feel more at home looking up closely to this because the stitching is incredibly fine. She's used silk linen and cotton. The colorways in each disc are quite exquisite, and I think that the planning involved in the wave of color has been really beautifully carried out as well.
Yeah.
The color combinations in those last three are just really pleasing to the eye. Yeah,
They
really.
are. I'm a bit of a green fan myself, so yeah, I think that they work really well. I think they do work really well. Yeah. So have we been right around? Yeah. So I think that was probably our last piece, Gary.
Okay. Do we have any questions
All
here?
right. Yeah, just I think there's one more. Are certain shapes typically used by the indigenous people? Are there symbolism in those shapes?
By our First Nations weavers, I think I can't generalise there, and I don't know that many of our First Nations weavers would generalise in that way either. I think like there's traditional baskets. Sorry, we've just got somebody coming into the gallery. There's traditional baskets and that were used for cultural purposes, but the fibre art that we tend to see today from our First Nations weavers is more sculptural and is made as an artwork and is shown in galleries everywhere. And I think just as Indigenous and First Nations painting is coming into its own, I guess being more recognised, definitely our fibre artists are also getting more recognition globally in the contemporary art world. And I guess that's where it's positioned at even though there will be shapes like the dilly bag that have been handed down from generations, and they are still being made, and I think that's possibly what you're asking me. They're still being made as those traditional pieces, but they're being sold as artworks.
Right. Okay.
So that, Beth, that gets then to our discussion today in the podcast is, here we have again.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Art. This is art.
It's something that you could talk about for, and we do talk about it, and I think particularly in basketry, art versus craft, and, where the two intersect. And, I wouldn't even begin to give a definition there because I just think, it's very hard to do that. But I do think that most basketry that we're seeing here, certainly this is all sculptural contemporary basketry. So we don't have any, traditional shapes here, but you can see the traditional techniques and, they're alive and well and being handed down. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really neat thing. They're not being lost in history. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Let's hope not. Yeah.
Well. Yeah.
Oh, one more question. What kind of dyes are used for coloring the natural materials? Dyes.
Yes. Look, I'm not an expert because I don't dye any of my natural materials. I don't feel the need to do that. I like how it dries, and I like the natural color gradations. But raffia is used extensively in Australia as a soft fibre, and possibly this is because pandanus was one of the traditional fibres used by our First Nations artists, and I think that many of our First Nations artists are also using raffia because it's more easily available and it dyes well. And I think that they're using both their traditional dyes on the raffia, but also turning to modern technology and modern dyes. So some of the dyes are natural and some are not natural, obviously, from the colours that they're achieving. So it's like other areas, I suppose, where people are dyeing threads. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it's
thank
been
you so
lovely to
much.
talk about our work.
That was a treat. All right. We'll call it there. April, thank you. Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks, Gary.
All right.
Thank
Thank
for
you.
holding on with all the technology
Yes.
dramas.
Yeah, sorry about that. You know, we are a long way away. We're a very long way away.
We worked it out. We worked it out. All right.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
definitely
Thank
worth
you.
it. Definitely worth it.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
and
you.
thanks to
Take
everybody
care.
for joining us. All right. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Gary, see ya.
Bye.